Now, let's go to the US, where efforts to delegitimise Donald Trump's presidency continue in earnest. A deeply divided House has voted 232 to 196 to approve a resolution setting ground rules for the impeachment inquiry. Republicans are calling it a de facto coup against the president. The vote went along party lines, as you would expect. No Republicans voted for the resolution, while two Democrats, interestingly, crossed the floor and voted against it, Gideon. It's quite fascinating what's happening here. They have tried everything to...
Is it fascinating?
Well,
I'm bored with it.
I'm fascinated by the relationship between the Democrats and their media cheerleaders working in concert together, as they did throughout the Russian collusion hoax.
That's correct.
Just going to every step possible to say that 2016 didn't really happen. This guy isn't a legitimate president.
What fascinates me is that they can't see how much damage they are doing to themselves. This stuff is so beltway and so thin, they put all their eggs in the basket of the Russian collusion hoax, got absolutely nowhere, and now they're doubling down on something that's even more thin with less evidence behind it. But every minute they spend...
They've released the transcript.
Yeah.
We could all read it.
No smoke, no fire, correct.
And yet, and why are they having these hearings behind closed doors? Why are journalists not allowed to go? Why can't questions be asked? I mean,
if you're going to have a show trial, at least show it. You know, they're not doing it correctly. But every minute they talk about this stuff is a minute they are not talking about getting Americans back to work, cutting red tape, cutting taxes, things that Donald Trump has absolutely smashed.
I don't want to talk about that.
But this is the thing.
They're not their strengths. I mean, they're not areas they actually want to challenge him on. That's why, you know, when's the last time you heard...
Talk about Medicare or something.
Yeah, talk about that.
But whatever it is, they're not talking about things that will shift any votes in 2020. Generally, the people that are interested in this stuff are hardcore Democratic voters who sit around watching CNN all day. They are not going to win hearts and minds with this. It's just a wing and a prayer exercise.
Well, Daisy, Conrad Black wrote a scintillating piece this week, damning much of the media for their reporting and their complicity in pushing false narratives. Black wrote, "Whatever else he may be, Donald Trump is the rightful president, and those who don't like it can vote against him next year. The media terror has gone too far, and the executioners of the innocent are about to be executed by the survivors. This is the pattern of revolutionary movements that frighten and revolt their former partisans." Wow. Black also predicted that impeachment will fizzle and the Democrats will wallow in their squalid failure to produce a feasible candidate for the White House. Some fairly strong language there, but what do you think, Daisy? What do you think the impeachment process will damage him, or is it only going to strengthen support behind him?
Well, it's certainly not going to shake off Trump's base, that's for sure. I mean, they don't take anything that the media does or that the Democrats do to smear Trump seriously at all. They've totally tuned it out because they're so used to it that these attacks have ceased to have any kind of meaning. And in fact, I think they quite relish these attacks because it gives them another chance to stand behind the president and say, hey, we're not going to take this rubbish anymore from the mainstream media and these highly partisan Democrats. Look, I'm not going to lie, I am concerned about 2020. You know, my Trump love is way up there, but I am concerned about it because there might just be enough people who sort of dip in and out of politics and hear just enough of this stuff from the Democrats to think, you know what, maybe this is a bad guy and there is something to this. Whereas those of us who follow it, we know that there is nothing to this. We all read that letter. We all know that it's absolutely nothing. We all know that the Ukrainian leader himself said there was no quid pro quo. They can't actually pinpoint anything specific that Trump has done wrong in terms of impeaching him. And you can contrast there to, say, Bill Clinton, where he committed perjury. There was a very specific thing that he did. And aside from anything else, Rita, this impeachment, in terms of removing him from office, would seem highly unlikely because in order to actually get him bumped out, they need a 2/3 supermajority in the Senate. And as we know, the Republicans have the Senate anyway. So for them to even get a simple majority of over 50% would seem very tricky, let alone 2/3. They'd need something like... No, it's never going to happen. They need something like 20 Republicans to defect, which again would seem very, very unlikely. But my theory about this, Rita, is that Nancy Pelosi, who pushed this forward immediately, has no faith at all in her 2020 candidates to take on the juggernaut that is Donald Trump. Let's face it, they're insipid, they're timid, they're far left. The only one who's any good is Tulsi Gabbard, and she'll never get the nomination because she backed Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton. So she's trying to have this cloud of impeachment hanging over Trump throughout his 2020 campaign to somehow give them any shot of winning. The whole thing is sick, it's highly partisan, it's unscrupulous, and it is damaging for the Democrats in the long run, I think.